What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Master and Drum Whiskey Room. I am Jason C, and today I am tackling an interesting question I've gotten a lot lately from viewers asking, what are some things I wish I knew before getting into bourbon and whiskey and starting off on this long and wonderful journey? Well, after thinking about it, I think I've come up with my top 5 answers, so let's get started. So my first one is age isn't everything. In the beginning, I think much like a lot of people who want to try great whiskeys and get into it, always seem to think that older is better because a 4, 5, 6, 8-year bourbon or whiskey can possibly be better than a 10, 12, 15, or even a 27-year-old bourbon, right? Now, while some ultra-aged bourbons and whiskeys can be phenomenal and complex and rich in flavor, but there are some that can be over-oaked, bitter, dry, and flat. I've had plenty of whiskeys that are 12 years or older that are completely blown away by a younger whiskey just based on flavor and balance. So my advice is don't just buy something because it's a higher age because you think age makes it better. That's always not the case. Good example here is this Orphan Barrel 25-year bourbon that I have. A lot of people love this one. I just really didn't think it lived up to what I thought it would be. It's 25 years old. It's really high age, but I dropped about $250 on this and I really don't think it's that great. So please, if you're out there and you've seen ultra aged bourbon that you're thinking about buying and it's a lot of money, like $250, $300, see if you could try that whiskey or bourbon before you could buy it, or try it at a friend's house before you spend that kind of money. Second up is that story and marketing don't always make a great whiskey. How many times have you walked into a store and saw a bottle on the shelf with a cool bottle design and a label, had fancy words on it like rare, very small batch, handcrafted, or reserve, had a very well-written and amazing story on the bottle talking about tradition, craftsmanship, and history? It happens all the time. For marketing bourbon in today's day and age, authenticity and storytelling is key, especially for new distilleries trying to make their mark. There's a lot of amazing and great history out there when it comes to bourbon and whiskey. You guys know I love my history, but I was burned a bunch of times on marketing terminology on new bottles entering the market, even new bottles from older distilleries looking to introduce a new bottle into the market. But always remember, you can't drink the marketing terms or the story the bottle comes with. All you can rely is on your own likes and dislikes. So if you run into a bottle you're not sure of with a lot of fancy words on it and stories on it, do your research and make sure you know exactly what you're buying, or you could just watch the Master and Drum and find out if it's worth it. Like this bottle of Old St. Nick, that was our very old St. Nick, which is a 12-year-old bourbon that has artisan crafted on the front, has a very fancy 12-year-old label, has a really nice drawing of Old St. Nick himself. It's only 90.2 proof. It was $250 and probably one of the worst buys I've had this year. All right, take a quick sip here. Third is finding popular bourbons and whiskeys is a lot tougher than I thought. Now, if you're a seasoned bourbon hunter and whiskey hunter like I am, have you walked into a liquor store and heard someone else walk in and say, you guys have Pappy, you guys have Blanton's, BTAC, Elmer T. Lee, Birthday Bourbon, Parker's Heritage, Colonel Taylor, Old Fitz, and I can go on. Now, back then that wasn't totally me, but I walked into some places asking for some of these hard to find bourbons, figuring I could just walk in and walk out with something that everyone wanted. I always wish I went back and bought more Elmer T. Lee when I could. It was on the damn shelf for about $40, and I wish I bought it all up when I could. Not only was I wrong then, but the market today has made it even more impossible to find allocated and sought after bourbons and whiskeys. Secondary markets and the popularity today of bourbon and whiskey have driven the prices of both through the roof, and a lot of whiskeys that you were able to walk in and find on the shelf are pretty much nowhere to be found. The sought after ones end up on the secondary markets or at shady liquor stores for quadruple the price, or store and state lotteries where you have to compete with thousands of people for a chance to own one. So if you want to find allocated and hard to find bourbon, here are a couple tips that I have. One, keep an eye on release dates so you know what to look for. Now, BreakingBourbon.com has a great calendar to follow every single year, every single release. It's a very helpful list. I'll put the link down in the description of the video. Second is get to know your liquor store owners. This one is pretty much a no-brainer. Find a good, honest store that gets hard to find bottles from time to time. Become a good customer. Develop a rapport with that owner. Get on a list, follow them on social media if you can. Over time, as you build that relationship, they may call you just in case you're looking for that special bottle that just happened to come through their door, and they may call you first. Next up is traveling and asking family and friends that live in other states is always smart. Definitely reaching out to them and they could lend a helping hand and trying to help you find different bottles is always a good thing. Selections of whiskey can be very different from state to state, and using geography to your advantage can help you score bottles if you have some family and friends that are willing to do some hunting for you. Next up is join a local bourbon or whiskey group. Some whiskey groups and bourbon groups have great access to barrel picks, and when some members definitely walk into stores and find some hard to find bourbons and whiskeys, they can sometimes share that information among the groups. I also think shopping early is a good idea too. If you know your local store is getting a shipment of bourbons and whiskeys on a Tuesday, get up, get out early, be the first one out the door. Yeah, you may have to wait an hour or so, but if it means scoring that bottle you've been searching for all this time, it'll be worth it. Lastly, and one that's worked for me, is to go to a liquor store that in a not so great part of town. Now, I have found some hard to find bottles. I have found some Dusties sitting on the shelf in some of these stores. You know, some of these stores that aren't visited by usual, bourbon hunters and people within your community or your group. Sometimes you can find some really good gems in there. If you do, try to go in the daytime though. Number 4 is a big one. Don't disregard brands that are available and on the shelf because they aren't from Buffalo Trace. Like a lot of you out there, when I started collecting and hunting bourbon, I needed to find all the Blantons, all the Elmer T. Lee, all the Weller, all the Pappy I could find. I disregarded amazing brands like Old Forester, Wild Turkey, Knob Creek, all the old granddads, simply because I didn't know any better. And what I heard from everybody else out there was that Buffalo Trace was the best bourbon on the planet and the one to get. Now, while I love Buffalo Trace and many of their offerings, quickly I learned how much great whiskey and bourbon are sitting right there on the shelves that were better and more available than a lot of the bottles I constantly chase from Buffalo Trace. Wild Turkey has become one of my favorites, along with Old Forester and others. Even Jack Daniel's Barrel Proof has made my top available list as well. If you guys haven't checked out my overrated and underrated bourbon list, I will leave the links up here. Check them out when you can. Point is, you don't have to go crazy like I did trying to find Buffalo Trace offerings like this Weller 12, which I hunted endlessly for, paid a premium for, and there's probably, I could name at least 25 to 30 bourbons that are available on the shelf that I like more than this. Basically, do what I did, guys. Buy Elijah Craig, Four Roses, Knob Creek, Old Forester 1920, Wild Turkey, and try everything. You won't have to hunt for long, and you most likely will find something you like even better. Lastly is probably the best one and the best advice I could give everyone just trying to get into bourbon and whiskey. Don't commit to being one type of whiskey drinker. I'm gonna be a bourbon guy, I'm gonna be a Scotch guy, I'm gonna be an Irish whiskey guy, or whatever. There's too much good whiskey out there to pigeonhole yourself to only drinking one type. So what do I mean by that? Not all bourbon is Jim Beam, not all Scotch is Ardbeg, and not all Irish whiskey is Jameson. The selection these days is amazing. Each corner of the world, including Japan, Taiwan, Ireland, Scotland, India, Texas, Kentucky, Australia is making amazing whiskey. A lot of bourbon drinkers think all Scotch tastes medicinal and smoky like Ardbeg, when that is the farthest thing from the truth. I mean, Irish whiskey is one of, if not the fastest growing segment in the world, and amazing brands like Teeling, Redbreast, Waterford, Napaw Castle, and more are putting out incredible whiskeys that are cask strength, non-chill filtered, and have incredible flavors. I'll admit, in the beginning, I just wanted to be a bourbon guy. I was just gonna stick to bourbon and stay there. That was gonna be my wheelhouse, and I wasn't gonna really venture too far out of that. And that was probably the most short-sighted thing I could have ever thought or said, because trying world whiskeys from all those places I mentioned has opened my eyes to such an amazing array of flavors. It's made me a better reviewer. It's made my palate a lot more sensitive to different flavors. And also it's opened me up to a broader audience, and that's what really whiskey is about. If I could sit along with a bigger category of people to talk Scotch and Irish whiskey and Indian whiskey. That's really what whiskey's about. Remember, there is no one ruling body of whiskey, guys. Whiskey is made in all corners of the world, so people in all corners of the world can come together and have a drink together, whether it's a bourbon, Scotch, Japanese, or Irish whiskey. So don't let some douchebag tell you one style of whiskey is better than the other. That's an opinion, it's not a fact. Same reason I say don't let some tell you how to drink your whiskey. I've heard self-proclaimed whiskey experts tell people not to add water, not to add ice, drink it this way, drink it that way. You should be sticking to this one style of whiskey because it's better than this one. Those people don't know. I wish I knew it then. I'm glad I know it now. Drink what you want, how you want, explore the categories, taste as much as you can. Don't stick yourself in a singular category of whiskey. You do that and you're already way ahead of where I was back in the day. All right, guys, well, I hope you enjoyed this video for my top 5 things I wish I knew before getting into whiskey and bourbon and starting off on my bourbon journey. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that subscribe button below. Please hit that like button. If you haven't yet, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter. I'm gonna pose the challenge to you guys, all of you seasoned bourbon and whiskey drinkers out there. What are your top 5 things you wish you knew before getting into whiskey and bourbon and enjoying all those wonderful spirits I spoke about? So with that, cheers. Thanks for watching The Mash and Drum, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.